Five Nights at Freddy's 2 has always been such an odd sequel to me, and I know that's an odd thing to say, especially a game like this. A game that has been accepted and loved by the whole community since it was released. It's a weird thing to say that I generally do not like this more than the first one. And that's not me saying that the game's not good, because I generally enjoyed it, and I generally have a bunch of good things to say about it, but there is just some reasons that I feel like this isn't as good as the first one, and some things it does that it just can't compete with the first one. And that's what we'll be talking about today. What FNAF 2 does well and what I believe it does wrong. Five Nights at Freddy's is well known for its praised designs, and that's true. Five Nights at Freddy's has complex and well-made designs that are iconic and everybody knows, like the FNAF 1 animatronics. Everyone knows those. When you think of FNAF, you think of those designs. And FNAF 2 takes that idea of good designs and puts it up by 10. FNAF 2 has easily the best designs out of the whole game, and it only gets better from there. As in FNAF 1, the reason they're so well known and classic because they have this simple design that reminds you of like a Chuck E. Cheese animatronic. Freddy's simply sporting a bow tie, a top hat, and nothing else. He's just bare naked. Get it? Bare naked? Now, if we take a look at Toy Freddy, he has different shades of brown scattered around his body. His top hat is now sporting a red line instead of just pitch black. He holds a microphone now, and he also has buttons. He has this new design, especially since he's made of this shiny plastic type look. It really gives this futuristic type feeling, especially since this is a sequel, but it's more of a prequel. In the lore, it's a prequel. That's what I assume. Also, all the characters are more slimmer, while in FNAF 1, all the characters are more fat, especially you, Chica. But they're not even the best designed characters in the game, because we haven't talked about the withered animatronics are easily the most beloved designs in the whole series. And they truly are good designs and are worth all the hype they have around themselves. Because if you really think about it, in that time in Five Nights at Freddy's, we've never seen like a broken character like that. Besides like maybe Foxy. But he's not really, you would say, withered, right? He's just like a little old, maybe a little rusty. And you barely get to see his like broken parts because he's always surrounded by shadow. Because FNAF 1's more of a dark game, as in FNAF 2's light. So this is the first time we've seen, like, broken and actually really scary animatronics. Withered Chica especially scares me the most, with her, like, gapping giant mouth. It is generally so spooky. Bonnie with his face seemingly torn off of his body, and his one giant arm forcing his body to lean sideways. It is such a well-made design. Freddy being the tallest and just towering over you, especially when he's in your office at the moment and he's just leaning to, like, see you eye to eye. That is such a scary part. And Foxy, of course, the meat rider of the game, like the Bonnie of the game. Well, you know, I have really nothing to say about him. He's kind of just the same design as Foxy from number 1. But you get the point, right? All these characters have good designs. There relatively isn't any FNAF character in number 2 that have bad designs. Mangle especially is such a good design. The Puppet has a good design. Wizard Golden Freddy has a good design. They literally all have good designs. Well, you can make an argument about Balloon Boy. But you get my point, right? All the designs are good, and they kind of work with the game, because FNAF 2 is more of a bright game. They use the technique of overwhelming to make it scary. As in FNAF 1, they use the atmosphere to their advantage, with darker animatronics, darker visuals, everything's more darker and abandoned. As in FNAF 2, everything's in order. Like, there's nothing, like, it's not abandoned. It's still open. It's not closing or anything. And that leans into our next subject. Atmosphere, as I mentioned many times, is something that's really important in a video game. It sets a standard for the game and what happens in the future. It gives you a taste of what you're gonna get next. Like, if you hop into a happy game with, like, sunshine and rainbows, you're gonna think it's a nice, fun game. While if you're playing Resident Evil, it's raining and scary and dark, you're gonna know you're in a horror game. But I find FNAF 2 Atmosphere to be really interesting because the game is really bright and colorful. The animatronics are colorful except for a few exceptions. But the area feels really inviting. It gives you this happy place that was turned evil. And that's basically what it is because of the murders. This once happy, charming place is now filled with evil. One thing you can compare this to is EXEs, like Sonic EXE, once happy place from your childhood, now turned evil. More about the atmosphere is the giant vents and doors, just gaping doors. You have no protection other than your flashlight and helmet, leaving you open for whichever animatronic wants to jump at you and tear you apart. It's really scary because in FNAF 1, you have doors to shut. But in FNAF 2, you're just wide open. Anyone could kill you. And if you put it in a player's point of view, FNAF 1 just came out and FNAF 2 is releasing and you decide to play it. And you would think that they would keep the same mechanics and you could shut the door. But when the game opens, there's just this giant gaping hole that you can't shut and any animatronic could just kill you. It's really good on how Scott Cawthon did that. And I feel a lot of games miss this idea of changing mechanics and atmosphere in all their games, but not changing it too much to where you can't recognize the game franchise anymore. I feel like FNAF 2 does that perfectly. But another thing I feel like this game does really well in is its mechanics. FNAF 2 takes an already interesting mechanic of trying to survive animatronics by shutting doors and monitoring where they are, and turns it up by 10. With taking away the doors, and now not only are you having to survive 4 animatronics, but over 8 animatronics this time. Now, most of them do have pretty much the same mechanics, but there are some outlookers or different ones, such as the puppet, which you have to keep track of her music box and not let it go fully down or you're instantly dead, which is a really cool way of bringing stress onto you while you're already trying to survive these multiple animatronics. And she can be really difficult to keep wound up at times because she takes less time as the nights progress. Also, a fun fact, which I don't think most people know, but while the music box is like fully down, if you flash your light fast enough, you can catch the puppet coming out of the box. And I feel that's a really cool detail in the game, which, also just brings more purpose to why this game is so well made. Another interesting character with new mechanics is Wizard Golden Freddy, which isn't a new character by himself, but because in FNAF 1, he popped up more as an Easter egg. You wouldn't really have to worry about him, because you would literally have to look at a camera to see him, or type in 1987 in the Ultimate Custom Night bar. But in FNAF 2, they make him more of a recurring character, him actually being a threat, popping up in your office and making you either have to put your mask on or flash your light when he pops up in the hallway as a giant head, which is also a really scary thing that when I first seen made me shit myself. But Golden Freddy in the game really isn't that much of a bother. He's really easy to deal with, just put your mask down. But my point is, Scott Cawthon added a lot of these characters, and I feel like it does a good job using the mechanic of overwhelming you for fear. As in FNAF 1, which I like to compare FNAF 1 and 2, if you haven't noticed already. But in FNAF 1, you have a lot of time to just sit down and relax. Even in Night 6, you still have time to relax, because the characters are slow, and there's not even that much characters to begin with. So, it's just an easy game. And I feel that's a really good way of scaring people, is overwhelming them with different senses. You literally are overloaded with objectives to keep yourself alive, that when you get jump scared, it actually scares you. Which I think Scott Cawthon did a really good job at doing. But FNAF 2, you have no time to relax. Every second you have to worry about which character's in your vent, listening to sound cues, flashing Foxy, keeping track of the puppet. there's just so much going on at once. In a game, which if you're when a jump scare happens, it's you're not already focused on the animatronics. If you're it actually scares you, especially Wizard Foxy. And for FNAF 2, in its case, yes, I can agree that FNAF 2 really isn't enjoyable in the later nights because how overwhelmed you are. And that is a big flaw in its gameplay because it just gets unenjoyable and horrendously hard. But I feel that's okay because FNAF is known for its hardness and difficulty. Like, usually you don't play FNAF for fun. You don't just hop on FNAF and say, oh boy, I can't wait to spend 2 hours playing this. People usually play it to seek out difficulty. And that game is for difficulty. Most of the games aren't really that hard, but I feel like FNAF 2 is one of those games that it's meant to be hard. Therefore, it's a bad thing it's that difficult, but a good thing as well. Now, for the final part of the video, I want to discuss if FNAF 2 is better than FNAF 1. And for my opinion, no. I feel FNAF 1 is better than FNAF 2. Not by a league, not by a mile, but I still feel it does things that FNAF 2 just can't compete with. As I mentioned earlier in this video, FNAF 1 does atmosphere way better than FNAF 2 because it's way darker and scarier and uses that idea of a happy, wonderful place turning evil. Now, you could say FNAF 2 does the same thing, but not at such a degree as FNAF 1. Also, I just find FNAF 1 way more enjoyable than FNAF 2. Not as difficult, but simply just more enjoyable. But FNAF 2 does things way better than FNAF 1. As designs, FNAF 2 is way better at that. Also, with mechanics, FNAF 2 is way better than FNAF 1, with just more things to do while you're waiting. Both have their flaws, and they both have their cues and cons. But that's pretty much all the video. So thanks for watching me for like 11 minutes on yapping about if FNAF is good or not. But you really get the point, right? FNAF 2 is a good game, just with some flaws. And that's with pretty much all FNAF games. There's no definitive bad FNAF game. Except Freddy in Space.